Let's talk Kel'el Ware today. Kel'el Ware is a guy who's entering the draft from Indiana. He's 20 years old and he's 7 feet tall, around 240 pounds, and has a 7'4" wingspan. Now, this past season at Indiana, he averaged 16 points a game, 10 rebounds, 1.5 assists to go along with 59% field goal shooting, 42% from 3, and 63% from the free throw line. Shot 61% from 2 and had just over 1.5 turnovers per game. So his offensive stats are really good, especially for a guy who didn't have very good point guard play at Indiana. He's a really impressive athlete, lob threat, and probably one of the more talented prospects in this year's draft. He's a really fluid mover, especially for somebody his size. He can space the court and hit a three. And he did also, with the poor point guard play, but also on top of that, poor spacing at Indiana, where he was one of the better three-point shooters on the team at the center position. He's a solid defensive anchor, can block shots. He's got good feet and can stay in front of defenders. And overall, overall, his play improved throughout the season. He became more efficient in conference play for the most part, and we'll get into that later. And is a guy who you can see a clear role at the NBA level. He can block shots on one end, you can feed him lobs at the other, and he may even be able to step out and space the court and hit a three, because he did hit 42% of his threes. Now, that was on a ton of attempts, like 1.5 attempts or so per game. So we'll have to see how legit his three-point shooting is as time goes on. So on the flip side, some negatives, some concerns for Kel'el Ware. He's a guy who's got to be set up. And I noticed there's a few times he tried to put the ball on the floor. His handle wasn't great, so that's something maybe that can open up down the road, because he is a great athlete, but he'd get the ball poked away, lose it via turnover, etc. And so he's got to be set up, whether that's from 3 or as a lob threat via dunk or dump off pass, etc. And that's not necessarily the worst thing at the center position. That's actually pretty normal, but just something to note as you look at him as a prospect. Then the real concern that I have with Kel'el Ware is that he's a guy who is extremely talented, but there were concerns from Oregon, and I do think they were better at Indiana, but they still weren't perfect. And that is his overall demeanor and just lack of consistent hustle. He is a guy with his athleticism and speed at the center position where he should beat his opponent, the opposite center, down the court pretty much every time. He's fast enough to do so, but he doesn't run hard consistently. And that is a concern that I have with Kel'el Ware at the next level. Because on top of that, his free throw shooting, yes, it's 63% on the season, but it was just over 50% in conference play. And it actually regressed as the year went on, which says and just furthers my thoughts about Kel'el Ware, which are that the real concerns with Kel'el Ware are all mental. They are whether he can put it together, put the pieces together, and just figure out how to get the consistent maximum effort from him on a game in, game out basis. And so for me, the team that drafts Kel'el Ware is very important. I don't want to see him drafted by teams like the Pistons or the Wizards, just teams that just don't have good foundations, that don't have good cultures in place. He needs to go to a team more like the Spurs or the Heat to have better success. And so for me, it would really depend on whether I would draft him as to who am I as a team, what kind of culture do I have, what is my plan in place for Kel'el Ware, because I really do think he's a guy who we could look back on in a couple years and say he was drafted by the wrong team or he was drafted by the right team. And I think it's going to be really important the team fit for Kel'el Ware, because he certainly has the pieces to be a great NBA player, or at least a good NBA player, but there's also the concerns where he could not be in the league in a couple of years. So to me, he's a guy who has a high ceiling and a low floor. And he's a little too risky for me to draft, so I would not draft him. I do think he goes anywhere between 10 and let's say like 25 or so in this year's draft. I think he's a first round pick. And like I said, teams with good cultures would be a good fit for Kel'el Ware. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm curious what your thoughts are on Ware and what other prospects you'd like to see me profile. Please subscribe to the channel for more great NBA content. I'll see you guys next time.